Hello, North Dakota high school bass players. My name is Nathan Sagsveen. I am a junior music education student here at Minot State, and today I'm going to be recording a short all-state audition tutorial that I hope you will utilize over the next few weeks as you prepare for auditions in January. So I'm going to play this excerpt at 3 different tempos for you. I'm going to play it at 80, 100, and 120. Let's start off with 80. I'm going to play it and then give you a few suggestions before I go on to the other 2 tempos. Let's see what our tempo is. There we go. Great. My bow did get a little stuck towards the end, but if that happens to you in the audition, just keep playing. It'll all be okay. So let's start to dissect this piece a little bit. I'm going to start at the beginning, and what I am doing is I'm putting almost a little tenuto, a little bit more weight on the first note of each group of 4. I think that adding a little bit of weight on those notes is really going to sort of capture the marching essence of this piece, because it is based on when Johnny comes marching home. So having that 1, 2, 1, 2 throughout the bass section on those 8th notes, it's really going to help just capture the essence of the piece a little bit more. Let's see. So it's going to sound sort of like this. It's going to sound sort of like that every group of 4. Just play the first note, have a little bit of a tenuto on there. And then also, one thing that I would suggest doing throughout these first few lines is sort of leading into the next measure, especially when we have what looks like a scale with the notes just ascending. If we're ascending into the next measure, I would suggest that you crescendo a little bit with it as well. So I'm going to start at the 2nd line, right on that B natural. If you crescendo a little bit into the next measure, it's going to help the piece really move along. And once you get into that next measure, bring it back a little bit, but then keep going as you get into the next measure. And then we have this really, really cool figure on the 3rd line. It starts with the A and the F sharp. I would suggest that you do the same thing, put a little bit of weight on the first note of those 4, or the first note of every group of 4, but make sure that those notes, that measure especially, is really in tune, because it sounds really, really cool. That was not a good example on my part. Let me try that again. Better. I like that. If you make sure that measure especially is really in tune, it is tough with the fingering that I'm doing. We're leaping sort of a little bit, but if you really get that engraved into your mind, that's going to sound really cool. Let's see, moving on to the 4th line, we have these slurs that start every group of 4, along with those accents. I'm going to play it real quick. So I really think that in order to capture that accent on the first note, yes, add a little bit of weight on the first note, but also I would almost barely play those other notes. Barely play the repeated ones after it. If you have those ones be a little bit quieter, it's really going to help that accented note pop out just a little bit more. Do that all the way throughout that line. And then coming into, we have this big slur, the measure before I. One way to think about this slur is I am thinking about it in terms of a group of 3 and a group of 4. Our group of 3 is going to be A, B natural, C sharp. And then our group of 4, or 5 if you wanted to count the A at the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm sort of thinking it as the group of 3 is going to be a quarter note, and the group of 4 is going to be a quarter note. Here how the group of 4 speeds up just a little bit compared to the group of 3. I know it sounds weird right now, and that all the notes don't sound even, but once you do pick up the speed a little bit, once you get it to around 110, 120, those notes are all going to sound even. So having a group of 3 and a group of 5 is going to work very, very well for that. Coming into letter I, we have this really, really cool figure. It's just fortissimo, it's just basses, this is what we are. I would suggest that you just have fun at this. Let me play it real quick. That is an interesting part right there, because although the slurred notes into that high D are on the right side of the bar line, you're going to want to play them before you get to 1. So you're almost playing them on the and of 4 right before we get to the next measure, 2, 3. Because you want to hit that D right on 1, okay? And it's important to make sure that all 4 notes are sounded as well. Make sure all 4 notes are sounded on there. It'll sound great. Coming right out of that, one more thing with the slur. Don't mute the sound on that high D a little bit, or don't mute it right away. Give it a little bit of vibrato on top. That'll help it shine a little bit more. Give it a little bit of like an echo on that. Because if we just did and we muted it right away, it doesn't sound the best. Give it a little bit of vibrato on there. Let it echo a little bit, let it ring. And then we come right back down. Just come right back down on that with a lot of weight. I'm going to lift after the D, move my bow back towards the frog a little bit to get to that E. And then coming into these slurs, it's sort of the same thing with the accented line, with making the other notes quieter. I would treat the first note of every triplet, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, treat that as an accent. Make the other notes a little bit quieter. Make the other notes a little bit quieter, and also when you just put in some bowings, it's just down, up, down, up. If you think about it that way, it makes it a lot easier to think about it. Don't be intimidated by the triplets. Add in some bowings. In reality, it's just quarter notes. And then coming out of that, just regular pits. Next line. When we get to that pits on the G, on that and of 1, I'm going to play that with my left hand. I think that once you pick up the speed a little bit, if you try and do it with your right hand, that's a lot of movement. But I think if you just do it with your left hand, it's going to sound a lot better. I'm doing it around the octave, around that harmonic. I'm using my second finger, my middle finger. If you want to use your first finger, great, do that. I'm just using my second, it's more comfortable for me. So if we get into it, if you pluck it with your left hand, it's going to be much easier. And then coming into the last few measures, we're going to do a big crescendo on those triplets. And the trick to doing that crescendo is start with a little bit of bow and then use more bow as you get towards the crescendo, as you progress through it. So let's see what that sounds like. Notice how I increased my bow, and then on that last measure, let it ring just a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily give it some vibrato, maybe a little bit, just a little bit of vibrato, but let it ring a little bit, don't meet it right away, and that'll be a really good way to conclude the excerpt for the audition. So, hope that helps. I hope all of that information will help you in your audition. I really think the trick to it is just going to be using less bow. If you try and use more bow, it's going to be impossible to make it faster. You'll see when I pick up the pace a little bit, I'm only going to use, maybe like 2 inches, 3 inches of bow tops. That's what I would suggest. So let's pick up the pace. I'm going to set my metronome to 100 now. Half note equals 100. Dubba 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 dum. So you could tell that it got a little bit muddier since I picked up the pace on it, but that's why we play it slowly. That's why we practice it slowly. My bow did get stuck a few times. If that happens, just move on. Just keep playing the piece. That's what happens when you play. I tried to add as many of those little nuances as I could with the tenutos and the vibrato and the ring, but I think 100 is a good tempo. My ideal tempo for this would probably be around 110. If you can get your audition up to 110, I think that's going to be perfect. But let's see what it sounds like past 110. I'm going to set my metronome to 120, and let's see what that sounds like. Seems a bit fast. Let's play it and see what happens. So yes, it is doable at 120, but I would suggest that you just stick around 110. That way you can focus on the clarity of the notes a little bit more. That way it sounds less muddy as well. 110 is going to be a perfect tempo. Quarter note equals 66. 3, 4. Here we go. So I have 2 big suggestions for the scale. The first of which is when we get to that high G, I would highly suggest that you use the harmonic up there I'm using my ring finger. I find that to be the most comfortable for hitting that harmonic. So when you get to the top of the scale, the notes are going to be 1 is going to be on E, 2 is going to be F sharp, and then you're going to have to lift up those fingers and only place 3 on that harmonic. It's going to sound like this. And then coming back down, we're going to skip 2, go right to 1 on that F natural, and then we're going to go down to 4 on that E flat. I will attach a version with my markings onto this video that you'll be able to access. I'm not going to go too in depth on them, but you can use my version, write them down. But I think that if you are perfectly in tune and you tune before your audition, using that harmonic is going to be really, really good on top. It's going to give you a good solid foundation for starting that scale and coming all the way back down. Just make a note of my fingerings on there as well. They're going to be different coming on the way down because it's a melodic minor scale. So make sure that you just take note of the different ones, different fingerings on the way down. You'll be golden. And then my second suggestion is that try and keep your bow as parallel to the bridge as possible. If you have a parallel bow, it's going to make your sound it's going to make it sound a little bit more even. Your tone's going to be very even throughout. And it also, try not to move up or down on the string as well during the scale. Pick a point and try and stay consistent across the strings with that. It's really going to give you an even sound. If you're moving your bow up like this, then you're not going to have a consistent sounding point on the string. Try and keep it parallel to the bridge and just straight across the string. You'll have an even sound and it'll be beautiful. If you have any questions, I'll make sure to attach my contact information on here, my phone number and email. Shoot me a message, send me a video of you playing or something. I'd be happy to work with you, give you some feedback over the next few weeks. And yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. We can set up a Zoom meeting, something like that. But that's all I have. Feel free to reach out. Hope this helps. Have a great day.